Hey guys, I'm Jonathan White. I'm here to help you master your sexual energy so you can magnetize your ideal life. And I'm here with Nakula Das, who is a good friend of mine and also co-founder of Spiritual Bad Boys with me. Nakula, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, it's thanks so much for having me on your channel, and I just want to say, man, it's always a pleasure. It's always exciting to get together, and the things that we've been able to teach each other and grow and be part of the Spiritual Bad Boys and co-found that movement. It's been awesome. Um, like Johnny said, my name is Nakula Das. I'm also helping people through the practices of sexual kung fu and success principles enhance their sexual energy and transform their life. And man, this is like my two favorite subjects: spirituality and sex. And sometimes people think they don't go together.
Mhm.
Especially depending on like if I grew up in a Catholic setting,
Mhm.
so they were kind of like, here's God and here's sex,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
don't like each other.
Yeah.
And I've always been like, but God made me, and I want to have sex. So how
Yeah.
does that work,
We're
right? And
birthed from sex. How does that work?
yeah, it's like God hates sex, but yet all I want to do is have it. So I'm, I'm
Such a
clearly
such
a
a cruel
sinner.
world.
That's right. Yeah, totally. It's like a sick joke, right? So
So
I'm really excited to talk about this subject.
yeah.
Yeah.
So at some point in your life, your spiritual mindset shifted a bit from that, Catholic upbringing. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, I've always gravitated towards spiritual practices. There was definitely a time in my life I moved away from spirituality. Maybe I actually remember the moment, grade 9 religion class. I was hammering my teacher with questions because I was finding so many incongruencies. Like, God loves you unconditionally, and He hates that you masturbate, right?
It's like, well, that's not unconditional. Like,
Well, that's right. So obviously there is a condition, right? So it's like, so I I was truly, I'm sure I was an asshole at some level. So I don't want to play total innocent in that. But I was truly inquisitive. I'm an inquisitive soul. I like to ask why, and it didn't make sense to me. So I studied other forms of spirituality. In fact, I've been on an incredible spiritual journey. I've spent time with Shambhala Buddhists. I'm part of the Hare Krishna order and devotee of Krishna. And devotee of Krishna simply means I am devoted to the spiritual essence of life, to the source of life. And a yogi means someone who's establishing themselves in yoga in union with the source of life. And I see that it's been described in many different ways in many different cultures, and quite honestly, I'm down with them all, in the proper or truest understanding. And one of the things that many traditions talk about, and definitely in the yogic tradition, as well as just general success principles, like in more Western philosophies, like Napoleon Hill's laws of success, and even I believe Socrates and some of the Western philosophers all talked about semen retention. Now, semen is the essence of a man's life, and semen is the essence of who we are. And how until we can understand our sexual energy, then really we can't have any spiritual development. So my understanding at first, again, was more of a repress it. God hates you when you masturbate. God hates when you have sexual thoughts. God hates when you covet another woman. But of course, as men, if we're all going to be just frank and honest, I've coveted a million women probably just in the last 3 minutes, and right, and
and you've
all that.
masturbated 20 times.
That's right. Yeah, and there's a reason that this is shot from here up. I'm joking. So, point is this: is that it seemed to be very contradictory. So, I started doing my own research, started learning about semen retention. But what I never found is a way to do it, or somebody who was actually diving in depth with practices, with knowledge. And what I found is that as you learn to retain your semen, as you learn to build your sexual energy, you will naturally be pushed towards a realization that I am more than my body. You may not go fully into like, oh my God, I have this love of God, or this, I want to be like some massive spiritual entity or something like this. But no doubt you will be pushed to realize that there is more to you than the physical body. Because as your sex energy develops, at least this is my experience, as my sex energy develops, and as I learn to move that energy through my body, what I've realized is that I have this ability to, first of all, attract things into my life. I realized that limitations that I used to have, I no longer have. Needs that I used to have, I no longer have. I used to need to sleep 8, 10 hours a day. Of course, I was smoking a lot of weed and doing a lot of, negative things. And I just sleep longer and longer and longer. With semen retention, my sleep quota is down and my awareness is heightened. I find that I can use the subtle energies to influence, to create, and I'm highly aware of that. So at bare minimum, you're going to realize that you are so much more than a physical body with these physical limitations. And at the ultimate, you may become an enlightened being.
Yeah, and so many masters of the past of many traditions talk about the importance of harnessing the semen energy instead of wasting it. You use that to build up your spirituality. The Hindus talk about brahmacharya. The Taoists talk about basically refining the jing, building the jing so you can refine it to chi and to shen. So you're taking that raw sexual energy, turning it into energy, turning it to spiritual energy. And has this been your experience as well? That you need to
Yeah.
kind of refine this essence, build it up to really unfold your spiritual nature?
Absolutely. Me, like, like 95% of guys, born in an age where, look, the first website I went to, well, the second website, first website I went to, and my hip hop guys will know this, was www.nas.com. And that's because, mom and dad were still, it was evening. I remember when I got my first computer and I went to nas.com, the moment mom and dad weren't around, the second website I went to was www.sex.com. Right. And it was like, whoa, look at this. Right. So so the idea that, sex energy, sexual passion has been driving me is I'm very open that I'm a very highly sexual person. I'm driven by my sex energy. One thing though is that, so why I mentioned that sort of upbringing is because in our culture today, we're only taught sex at one level, the physical level. But through the spiritual path and journey, I've learned that sex has so many different dimensions. It has an emotional dimension, it has a mental dimension, and it has a spiritual dimension. When you can experience the spectrum, so the physical side of sex, the emotional side of sex, the mental side of sex, and ultimately the spiritual side of sex, where there's this spiritual ecstasy, this spiritual joy that is non-dependent on anything physical, then you start to have a deeply spiritual life because you cannot deny the spiritual nature of life anymore. So that's been my experience so far. It's just enhanced every aspect of my life, materially as well as spiritually.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. You're talking about this full spectrum of sexual connection, and because most of us guys grew up watching porn, that's how we learned about sex. That's just one small end of the spectrum, and it's very distorted and amplified in that end of the spectrum. So that's what we've become so obsessed with, and we try to seek that out, that purely physical approach to sex, which ultimately leaves us depleted, it leaves us unfulfilled, and it becomes addictive. And when
Yeah.
you start to remember this emotional connection, when men start to open their hearts during sex, we start to open your higher centers, open to the cosmic energy, and it's just a whole another dimension of experience. It's this deep connection. In my opinion, sex is actually a very spiritual drive. It's like this drive to connect. It's this drive to evolve, to grow, to rebirth ourselves. It gets us out of this polarity and back into this state of connection with each other.
Well, and I think that it also brings, like, right now we have sex in marriages or relationships or partnerships that are only physical. And there's a lot of disconnection within relationships because of that in the bedroom. So, a lot of women are feeling unsatisfied in their sex life. And that's because a lot of men are simply thinking about themselves selfishly in the bedroom. I'm horny, I want to get off. And next thing you know, your partner just becomes a way to actually take something, right? You're going to help me achieve my goal, which is to get off.
Yeah.
When there's a spiritual aspect brought into sex, it becomes an act of service, an act of giving. Now when I'm with my partner, I'm consciously thinking, how can I give pleasure? and not just to climax, not just to orgasm, but how can I give pleasure physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? How can I really connect with my partner? And I think that's what's missing so much in our sexual culture. Our culture right now, is so, it's kind of strange to me. It's like a highly sexual culture, yet it's not talked about. You
Yeah.
know, sex is everywhere. It's like, you know, the marketing, it's everywhere. But yet it's like, don't talk about it.
Mhm.
Don't have sexual thoughts.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh my gosh, but did you see that billboard? You know, right? It's like screaming in your face. So I find that the more guys that are jumping on to semen retention, the more guys that are realizing they are spiritual bad boys, meaning they're in the material world, they have the material desires, but they're also spiritual. What we're seeing is guys that are practicing semen retention are actually evolving to be better men, not just in the bedroom, but also outside the bedroom for their partners and for all the people around them.
Definitely. And it's like, it's such a different experience when you approach sex without this, completely physical driven need to, experience sex, like this lust driven sex basically. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that end of the spectrum, but
Right.
when that's your only experience, that type of sex can only end in, this short peak ejaculatory orgasm for a man. Whereas when you're approaching it with love and this deep connection with your partner, connection with the universe, it's a totally different experience. That's where you get into these full body orgasm states, these like really emotional, just incredible transformational experiences. And then you don't feel the need to ejaculate because that in itself is so filling and charging. So it's just a completely different experience that most men have never experienced.
Well, totally. I totally agree with you. And, you know, something you said there is like that, like most men are like, you know, we're going into the bedroom, we're goal oriented, right? Like, you know, I've got the sex drive, I've got my partner, and I'm going to fulfill myself in that. What ends up happening is we end up being quick shooters. We end up having actually not as even great sex, because I find the more that I'm in a loving space and connected space, the sex is better. There's an emotional connection. There's a play, a funness. Myself and my partner as what's interesting is I think that there might be a misconception out there that's like, oh, you're practicing semen retention, so therefore you're having less sex, or your sex must not be as good or fulfilling. You must not be fulfilled. And it's actually quite the opposite. The reality is I'm having more sex now than I've ever had before, because I'm in my masculine energy. And so therefore my ability to create the scenario of sex, even unconsciously, right? Just having desire for me has been increased. But not only that, the sex is better because I'm not looking to go anywhere. I'm not looking just to get off. I'm actually looking to connect and to be there and to explore my partner, her energies, and explore each other. I found it to be way more playful, fun. And quite honestly, my partner and I, we explore all spectrums of sex. Like, we're very open sexually. I'm very open about my sexuality and say, look, yeah, look, I can't deny that I'm not into the animal part of it. And like, hey, babe, tonight we're getting raw, you know, right? You know, right. Yeah. But then there's other times where it's like, it's like sex non-physical through conversation is sex, meaning there's this exchange and it's deep. And both my partner and I will testify openly to say we have a better relationship now since I have been retaining my semen. We have a better physical sex life, but more importantly, we have a better relationship and connection because we're connected at different levels.
Mm. Yeah, it's been my experience as well, and I hear a lot of men say the same things. So you just have more energy to put into the relationship. You're more polarized, therefore there's a greater sexual connection. You don't have that recovery period after ejaculating.
That's right.
So,
Now, we're going to be talking about this stuff in our webinar
yeah,
coming
yeah.
up.
So Nakula and I are doing a webinar online training on February 8th. It's called How to Turn Your Sex Drive into Success. So basically, helping you to see that this sex drive that's controlling your life, we all have it. You can actually use that power to create success, create abundance in your life, whatever that looks like for you. And we'll be giving you specific tools, and I'll be teaching you techniques to transmute your sexual energy, radiate it throughout the body to activate your higher centers. Is there anything else you want to say about that, Nakula?
Just guys, go register. It will transform every aspect of your life. I promise you, it's one of the best decisions I ever made, was to actually go, okay, I didn't even feel like I necessarily needed it, but I knew that I wasn't performing at my best. I wasn't even thinking in the bedroom. I was thinking about it in form of my life overall. Once I realized that, wow, there's tremendous benefits both in the bedroom as much as there is out of the bedroom, I just became sold out. So I just encourage everybody that's connected to this, go register. You don't want to miss this webinar.
Yeah, so the link's in the description. It's free to sign up. Join us there on February 8th. And I'll put a link to Nakula's YouTube channel as well. He's got a great channel talking about semen retention and success principles. So thanks a lot for joining me again, Nakula. And I will see you soon.